Thank you, Jeffy. All right. I've got a few thoughts on the government, which are quite topical because we're going to vote this this weekend. So I thought, well, you know what? Let's talk a little bit about the different types of governments that we have. We have in Australia a democratic elected government. You can turn to 1 Samuel chapter 8. Our government, a democratically elected government, is where the power is given to govern and entrusted with the representatives chosen by the people through a fair electoral process which guarantees the citizens' rights and freedoms and ensures the government remains accountable to the will of the people. That last little bit, I'm not so sure there's much accountability going on these days with our governments. They seem to keep getting it wrong, and they seem to be continually getting away with it. At the moment, we have a Labor government in place. And yes, on Saturday, we have to cast our vote, don't we, to decide who will govern our country. And there's two major political parties in Australia, Liberal and Labor. And we know that they're out spruiking about what they can do for us, how much money they can give us, where they're going to save on this and that, and all their energy policies. And they're out there with their pamphlets. They'll be at the voting booths as you walk in, basically advertising how they can help us, vote for us, we're the right team, and we can sort out all of Australia's problems and help you. The major issue in this election is the cost of living. There's no doubt about that. We are all feeling the pinch. You think about the cost of groceries. You can drop a couple of $100 down at Woolies and you used to get a whole trolley load. Now it's like just one of those little handbag trolleys, you know, the little ones you carry around with your hands. You think of things like power, rent, housing, healthcare, fuel. Basically, every single thing that's associated with the cost of living has astronomically increased. We all know that's the case, don't we? And the issue is our wages haven't gone up in situ, have they? Our wages are here, but everything else is sort of up here. So it's way out of whack at the moment, and it's the biggest issue today. And a lot of the voting is going to be on how do we reduce the cost of living. So let's just look at 1 Samuel and chapter 8 here. And we're going to read here at the time of Samuel. And we read in verse 1, "And it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his sons judge over Israel. Now the name of his firstborn was Joel," what great name, "and the name of his second, Abiah. They were judges in Beersheba." The problem with this Joel is he didn't walk in the Lord's ways, and they turned after lucre, they took bribes, and they perverted judgment. So these were crooked. They were judging the people there. And then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Samuel unto Ramah and said unto him, "Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all nations." But the thing displeased Samuel, and when they said, "Give us a king to judge us," and Samuel prayed unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Samuel, "Hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto thee, for they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them." So here Israel, they wanted a king. They wanted a change of government. They wanted to vote not for God's government. They wanted an alternative government to rule here, if you like. And we see there, God said, look, they haven't rejected you, Samuel. It's got nothing to do with you. It's a vote against me. They don't want me to truly be their king and govern them. They want a king. They want somebody that they can see, a representative, someone that can rule over them in a throne, in a palace, someone they could directly talk to and lead us, the people of the time. Up until this time, the people of Israel there were 12 tribes, the 12 tribes of Israel. And you could almost liken it to a confederacy. There were 12 tribes that were all united, all had a common belief in God and had this overarching common values and morals and Old Testament laws, but they were all individual tribes, sovereign, had their own little machinations, their own tribal leaders and people within those different tribes, but they would all work together voluntarily. So in other words, if the Philistines came along and started attacking, they'd all bandy together and work to defend or what have you. So it was more of a decentralised structure at this time. A bit like when America was the Confederate States before they became the United States of America. It was made up of lots of little states. And this was kind of the situation here. And God would appoint and raise up judges to deliver the people from their oppression and govern them for a time. And the prophets were also used. God would raise up prophets who served as God's messengers, and they would provide moral and spiritual support and sometimes political guidance. But they would come and go. It wasn't like there was a constant state of governance with these judges, these prophets. Samson, Gideon, Jephthah, Deborah, Moses, Samuel and Eli, and there were others. They would all come in when needed, but it wasn't like we have Canberra and this centralised government here in Australia and all the decisions were made from there. It was a bit more autonomous. And that was the situation. Let's actually, we won't turn to it, but in Judges chapter 8, this was Gideon here. He, through the Lord, he won a great victory over Midian. And they wanted to lift him up and make him the king, to bring in a monarchy, to change this status quo. And Gideon said, I will not rule over you, neither shall my son rule over you. The Lord shall rule over you. So Gideon had it right. He's like, why do you want me, a monarchy, where I would pass it down through my son and this governance structure, when we've got the ultimate governance structure in God, the ultimate authority, the ultimate government, and he completely rejected it there. So he had the right attitude, but the children of Israel were yearning for this monarchy, this different structure, if you like, there. Let's continue on in verse 8 of 1 Samuel chapter 8. According to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them up out of Egypt, even unto this day, wherewith they have forsaken me and served other gods, so do they also unto me. Now therefore hearken unto their voice, howbeit yet protest solemnly unto them, and show them the manner of the king that shall reign over them. And Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people, and they asked of him a king. So here, you can only just imagine how hurtful and disrespectful this is to God, who is the ultimate authority, the ultimate government. He'd taken them out of the land of Egypt. He had delivered them countless times, and here they are voting for the opposition, if you like. No, we want a different structure. We want a different government. And, it was a total rejection of God's kingship and God's government there. And it really hurt God. He was disappointed, to say the least, I would say there. And maybe from time to time we've all felt rejection in our own lives from varying degrees. And it could be something where we've been married to an individual for many years, and then they turn to us and say, look, I don't love you anymore. I want out. I've met someone else. I want a divorce. And it's over just like that. And the rejection, and that has happened. And the rejection there is really hard to deal with, isn't it? And, it could be that job promotion where we've been working so hard and we've put our application in and we know that we're the right person for the job, but someone else, maybe there was a bit of nepotism involved, or someone else won that position, and the rejection there, the disappointment, it really hurts. I know in Izzy's testimony there on Sunday, she was talking about how she feared rejection so much, being rejected, being different, that she would do everything, because it hurts so much, do everything you can just to fit in, so you're not rejected. And we do these things because it really hurts, and we can suffer. And we've all suffered varying degrees of rejection. They rejected God here. And really, this situation was a classic case of looking over the neighbour's fence. And we look over the neighbour's fence, and what a beautiful married couple. Look how fit they are. They look great. You know, they're an amazing couple. They've got a boat. They've got the brand new car. They've just rolled in with a $140,000 caravan. They've just come back from Spain. You know, look at their gardens. You know, they're just amazing. These guys are just living the dream. Look at how picture perfect their kids are. Wow. You know, we're looking over. And I'm struggling. I'm just struggling to put food on the table. My kids are out of control. You know, well, we're not out of control, but they're a bit naughty. I'm struggling with the kids. I'm struggling in life, and I'm looking over there, and wow. But little do we know, when they shut the door, their marriage is on the brink of collapse. They're arguing. You know, maybe they're into debt up to their eyeballs. Their mortgage is really causing a lot of problems. They're both working every single day. Their kids are out of control. The whole thing's just built on a house of cards, and yet we're looking over there and going, wow, look at them. You know, and we can all fall into that trap. We don't want to. In the Lord, just be happy with what we've got and the blessings. We don't want to be looking at the things of the world, looking over and, wow, look at what they're involved in. They look like they're having a great time, and I'm not, and I'm struggling, and they're not. You know, and that's what can happen, looking at other people and other situations. And here, Israel were doing that. They were looking around, they were looking at the Philistines and the Amorites and the Edomites and the Moabites, and they all had kings and queens and palaces, and they had this monarchical style government and all the pomp and ceremony, and you know, they would have had street parades, and the Israelites would have been looking over and, wow, look at that king, and all the gold and the glamour, and it was all fake, empty, superficial vanity. But that's what they wanted, and that's where they placed their vote. You know, monarchical government is a form of government where a single person, known as a monarch, holds the position of the head of state. So, and it's typically hereditary. So it's passed down to your son, and then to his son, and it stayed within the family. And the monarchs can hold various titles such as king, queen, emperor, empress, sultan, emir, or many other titles. So this is basically what the people wanted, a monarchy to rule over them. So let's read in verse 11, and we pick it up here. And he said, "This will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen, and some shall run before his chariots, and he will appoint his captains over thousands and his captains over fifties, and he will set them to his ear to his ground, and reap his harvest, and to make instruments of war and instruments of his chariots, and he will take your daughters to be confectionaries and to be cooks and to be bakers, and he will take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants, and he will take a tenth of your seed and of your vineyards, and give to his officers and to his servants. And he will take your men servants and your maid servants and your goodliest young men and your asses, and put them to his work. He will take a tenth of your sheep, and ye shall be his servants, and ye shall cry out in that day because of your king, which ye have chosen you, and the Lord will not hear you in that day." Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, "Nay, but we will have a king rule over us, that we also may be like all the nations, that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles." And Samuel heard all the words of the people, rehearsed them in his ears, in the ears of the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, "Hearken unto the voice, and make them a king." And Samuel said unto the men of Israel, "Go ye every man unto his city." A lot of taking going on here, and you know, if that was the political party, you know, that they were handing out their pamphlets, and that was their sort of motto, and the way they were describing their government, I'd be thinking to myself, there's just absolutely no way I'm going to give a tenth of everything I have. I'm going to start giving my land. I'm going to have my daughters work for you. My sons are going to go to war for you and die. No thanks. You haven't got my vote. And I think I'll stick with the current system, the current government that's in place, which was God's government, and everything, all the great things that come along with that. But they didn't. They wanted a ruler, and they voted in that way. And we know that Saul was the first king of Israel. And he started well, King Saul. He was appointed there as the king, and he, towards the latter part there, he made some really poor decisions, and a lot of people were hurt and suffered over those decisions. And then King David came along, and this is where it really became a true monarchy, if you like. He was able to unite all the tribes of Israel, a bit like using the example of the United States of America. Before that, there was all those Confederate nations, and then they fought there was a big civil war, and then eventually they've all come together as the USA, the United States of America. And that's what David did here. He brought all the nations together, united them all as one Israel. And it became a monarchy at that point. And there was a really great, strong sense of unity at the time. David did some amazing things, but he had some absolute doozies as well, as we know. And the sin with Bathsheba and the murder of Uriah, then he had a census there where he was told not to do it, and 70,000 men died as a result of this plague. And then there was Absalom's rebellion. That was his son, and that's what happens in a monarchy when this style of worldly government, this man-made system. You have your son who wants to take you on, and how many times has the son knocked off his dad to take the top spot? And Absalom took on David here, and there was about 20,000 men that died in all of that machinations and shenanigans that went on. So there was a lot of problems here when they decided to move away from God's government. King Solomon then came along, which was David's son. He inherited the kingship, and he actually placed a very, very heavy burden on the people with all of his lavish buildings and lifestyles. So he actually conscripted a labour force of about 30,000 men. You can read about that in 1 Kings and chapter 5, verse 13. And these men were sent to Lebanon in shifts. It was fly in, fly out. You know, you go out to the mines, work here, and then come back. They were up there for a month, 10,000 at a time. And they were working in Lebanon, gathering resources, working to come back, bring it all back to build his palaces and his structures and the temple of God there. And they spent 1 month away, 2 months at home, and this was on this rotation there. He also enslaved about 150,000 Canaanite population there to work on these projects, so it was forced labour as well. He imposed a very, very heavy tax on the people to finance these extensive projects. He had the temple, he had his palace, he had his fortifications, he had store cities, he had chariots, he had horse stables as far as the eye could see. You know, it was mind-boggling, the extent of the structure and his wealth. He ended up having to divide the land into 12 administrative districts. Each district was responsible for providing food and supplies to the king. I don't know if anybody's seen Hunger Games, but it's, you know, everybody was divided into districts, and they had to supply the citadel, and if you didn't, you know, watch out. And I got a sneaky suspicion it was kind of very similar here. They literally had to work each district every month. They had to come up. So it was 12 districts, 12 months of the year. Every district had to go up and give a portion of their goods and you know, their produce, their livestock, their agriculture, and give it up to Solomon. It placed a heavy burden, a heavy tax on the people. This was the sheer scale of Solomon's court and his personal wealth. So there was economic strain there with the labour and the taxes and the agricultural economy, and there was a loss of freedom because you were conscripted, you know, into this system, and you're compelled to work. Don't forget, he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. Now, my wife, I can say this because Rachel's not here tonight, she's not well, but she cost me an absolute fortune. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. The amount of money I'm spending on her at the moment. And can you imagine, blokes, can you imagine 700 wives? What that would be costing you? I can't believe Solomon's kingdom wasn't bankrupt within the first 3 months. The credit card debt must have been through the roof, let's face it. They must have been going down to the local mall. He must have been, sort of doling the money. Look, here's the credit card, and it must have been a very, very burdensome tax on all the people. 700 wives and 300 concubines. There was a growing discontent with all of these heavy burdens imposed by Solomon. He took 7 years to build the temple, but I reckon he did this, because this is what I'd do if I was Solomon. But it took 13 years to build his own house. So I reckon he conscripted the Israelite people under the guise of, we're building God's temple here. We're building God's house. And I got a sneaky suspicion, it doesn't say, but I reckon they were working for free. And 10,000 at a time they were working, but you think of the supply chain to supply all of those workers, like food, housing, all the amenities that go along to supply this massive workforce. So I reckon they were working for free, and they just kept working. He just kept using them, not only to build the temple, but he probably rolled it on for all of his other projects. And I'll tell you why I think this is the case. We'll read a little bit about this. So this heavy levy, they weren't being paid. Like these guys that fly in, fly out, they're on 200, 300 grand a year. They get paid. I'm not sure whether these people were getting paid. They were doing it for the love of the Lord. And maybe it would have been great if it just ended at the temple. But he pushed it. He kept rolling it out. And we see there when King Solomon died, Rehoboam refused to lighten their load. We read about it in 1 Kings chapter 12. They actually made a plea. They said, your father, King Solomon, made our yoke heavy. Now therefore lighten the hard service of your father and his heavy yoke that he put on us, and we will serve you. You can read about that in 1 Kings chapter 12 and verse 4. So this clearly indicates to me that there was a tremendous hardship. This was heavy work. This wasn't like coming down once every 3 months down to here and doing a little working bee, or going down to camp every now and again and sort of doing a bit of whippersnippering around. You were working, right, for the man, for nothing. It was a burden here. And ultimately, Rehoboam wouldn't do it. He said, no, I'm going to work you harder. And ultimately, the kingdom divided over this. This is how harsh it was. So, from that, there was a northern kingdom, Israel, and a southern kingdom, Judah, all because of this burden. So there you go. The old Solomon, in all his wisdom and all his glory, his government just used it to basically enrich himself and his own. Maybe it started with good intentions, but it certainly, we know, it didn't finish well. No one was living the dream in this situation. And the amazing thing is God said that this would happen, and every single thing down to a T happened. And it's still happening. You think King Solomon was taking and was using. Does it sound familiar, this situation, to us today? Are we being taken advantage of? We live in a country that is infinitely rich in resources, infinitely. We export billions and billions of dollars. I think we're either the biggest fossil fuel exporter in the world or one of them. And yet the revenue distribution, when do we see it? Why is our cost of living through the roof? Why are we being taxed at every single turn? Why are we suffering? Why is it costing us just to put food on the table, to put our kids through school? The commoner, us, the everyday Aussie punter, we're getting used. We're being manipulated by these worldly government, by man's structure. And just like Solomon and every other government we see in the world today, and this structure that's in place, this man-made system, is benefits a few, but the majority suffer. That's just the way it is. When you throw the word of God out and his principles, and you vote for the opposition, this is what you get. This is what we're seeing today. And look, it's pretty, as bad as it is, it's still a lot better than many other places across the world. That's for sure. Both parents having to work to pay the bills. That has all sorts of consequences. We pay some of the highest prices for electricity in the world. Why? We're being played by the elites And the government that we elect, and they're not for the everyday Aussie punters like us. They're there to serve their own self-interest, the big corporates. And we're being taken advantage of by successive governments. Doesn't matter what government's in. Doesn't matter who you vote for. Just, look, don't even get me started. You know, I'm thinking about running. I'm thinking about running. Who would vote for me? Let's run. I'm getting a bit worked up here, so let me just slow down. You know, we talked about tax. I mean, you thought 10% was bad. We get 30 cents in the dollar. If you earn a bit more, it's 45, and they'll take half of it if you even earn more. You know, your GST on your super and your tax and your car rego and your stamp duty. Let's just leave it at that. So Samuel's sons, it's all take, which is what God said. And Samuel's sons, you know, they didn't walk in his ways, and they turned after filthy lucre, took bribes, and perverted judgment. And that's what we see in the government today. It's a rife, and it's because it's built on a house of sand. And you know, you will send your sons to war, like over in Ukraine and Russia. And millions have died because of dictators like Stalin and Hitler. The British were the biggest warmongers of all time, and now that whole nation's on its knees. Well, the United States of America have taken their place. You know, these are all consequences for choosing the wrong government. Just like he said way back then, where Samuel said, "This will happen," and we're seeing it all around us today. You know, the most abhorrent woke policies that we see, you know, under the guise of progressive policies and democracy and freedom of speech, which you can't actually talk about some of this stuff, you know. But they say you're free to talk, you're free, freedom of speech, but don't talk about this and don't talk about that, and we'll throw you in jail because of that. You know. People are slaves, they're oppressed, they're miserable, they're unhappy, and people are trapped under economic pressure, debt, consumerism, and the pursuit of worldly success, enslaved in a system that demands constant striving and often leaves people unfulfilled. You know, when God is rejected, just like they've rejected Jesus Christ, you end up serving another master, don't you? You vote for the opposition. Well, guess who the opposition is? You know, this opposition is there to take. He will steal your joy. He will steal your salvation. He will take every piece of happiness you've got. He'll take your family from you. He'll make you think the most unholy, you know, things. He'll change your life. He'll use and abuse you. A malevolent dictator. Satan. That's the opposition. And that's the vote that the world has really, really cast. And we see his government all over the world. I won't turn it, I've got to finish this up. In John chapter 10, it says, "The thief come not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy, but I have come that they might have life, and they might have life more abundantly." So, you know, what a contrast between take, I'm going to take everything from you, just like we see today. That's what the devil's going to do. He's going to destroy us, he's going to sift us, and there'll be nothing left. And we'll end up losing our salvation. There'll be nothing but death at the end of it. Whereas God's contrast is an abundant, happy, fulfilled life. He'll give us everything we need. That's the timer. Thank you. And, you know, it's so true. God's pro-life, everything that we need to live. The cost of living God cares about. You know, it would be a completely different situation if we were truly under God's government. Yeah, I know. Yeah, sorry, Rachel. She's calling up. Get off. She's calling up. So look, it's over. Yeah. So what have I got here? You know, God doesn't have lavish lifestyles and egos and palaces to run, and he's not making us grind for him, working for the man. You know, he gives, and we have this free will. None of us are forced to be here tonight. We're not conscripted. We're not forced labour. We're not working for him because he's demanded it of us. We're all here because of our free will, because we love the Lord, we love his government, and he is our King. And it's not a burden, it's a joy to serve the Lord. Let's finish in Psalms chapter 23. while you're turning there, come unto me, all you that labour and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For your yoke is easy and my burden is light. God is a benevolent God. He makes our life easier, and everything there is for our benefit. And we'll just finish off here in Psalms chapter 23. And he says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of thine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. You know, what an amazing scripture there. This is God's loving provision and care in our life. We certainly are in the presence of our enemies. We're surrounded by a corrupt government, a corrupt system. Our enemies are all around us, but he sets a table right in front of us that we may prosper, that we may eat and have everything we need to live a prosperous, healthy, happy, fulfilled life. And yes, we've got to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. We work for the government. I mean, there's probably some government employees here. Don't take offence into any of this that I've said tonight, you know. But you know, we've got to do what we have to do. But it's all coming to naught. You know, all these policies, all these prime ministers, all these political pays, it's all coming to naught because there's a new government on its way. A government of peace. The King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Prince of Peace is coming. And his government shall see no end. It's an eternal government. And we're going to dwell in his house forever and ever. Amen.